My name is Allan Wilmot. I'm from Jamaica. I was born in 1925 and I served in the forces when the war started and they asked for volunteers. I decided to volunteer because at that time Jamaica was a part of the British Empire, which I think actually still is, and Britain was in trouble and they asked for volunteers, and we young fellas decided to volunteer for different services. In my childhood days, as I can remember, at the age of about 3 or 4 years of old, I went to prep school. And from then, I went to elementary school, and I stayed in the elementary school for a few years well, and then I obtained a scholarship to Wilmot's College. And that's where I was until I decided to leave it and join the Royal Navy. My parents had ideas. I had my own ideas because as a kid I used to, my father was a role model to me, and his uniform and its importance. I said to myself, well, that is my life, but he didn't want me to do that.
What did your father do?
My father was the skipper of the inter-island cargo ship. He was the first black skipper, because the skippers are always Europeans, but he was the first one to break through. I joined the Royal Navy in 1941, and I served on the HMS Hawking, which was a minesweeper. And then 1943, I transferred to the RAF, Air Sea Rescue Service, and I served on the rescue boats and different jobs pertaining to the Air Sea Rescue Service. Well, I was involved in the operation of when I was in the Royal Navy. We used to do minesweeping, convoy escort, also picking up survivors, because at that time the German U-boats were very active in the Caribbean, and they were sinking the cargo ships and the oil tankers. So we had to play a part there in trying to save as much survivors as we could. Well, it was more or less a new experience. In the Navy, you're on a ship and your family. So you more or less coordinate with each other, because your survival depends on each other. And fortunately, there wasn't much of us, just 6 of us Jamaicans. The rest were English and 1 or 2 Europeans. Most of the time I was the only black on the crew. There wasn't much of us in the Air Sea Rescue. And I realized that most of the result of it was they just didn't have a clue. For instance, once you're black, you're this side, coming this side of the world now. Once you're black, you're from Africa. How did you get into the services? Because in those days it was a big deal to be in the RAF as a native of this country. It was a big deal to be in the RAF, and seeing your black face in the RAF uniform, they just couldn't come to terms what was happening. Before the war started, Germany knew that regardless of what Chamberlain said, they were going to fight. So they had all these U-boats placed and spies. Jamaica had a lot of spies, German spies, because just before the war started, they came out there starting business, German-owned business, import-export business. And those fellas, even in the Catholic Church, you had the American German fathers as spies. They were sending messages because Kingston, Jamaica was a collecting port for all the ships that operate in cargo boats and tankers and everything. So they used to transmit the news that so much ships in the harbors and all that, until the British start to put their listening thing, and they get to understand that these information was being sent from Jamaica. This is what we used to put over, and they climb up on this, and we get them aboard and rush them back to hospital.
Did you rescue many people?
Oh yes, we did.
How many?
According to the count, we saved 18,000 lives over the period of war.
But what about yourself?
Well, I don't know that. I really don't know that. After the war, I went home 1946, was demobbed. I got a job in Jamaica, but unfortunately, they weren't expecting us to come back, and nothing was done for our rehabilitation, because the British government thought it was the responsibility of the Jamaican government to more or less make plans for us to go back in civilian life. And they eventually worked something out and start taking us in different government departments and all that. I got into Customs and Excise department. Well, after a while I realized I wasn't getting anywhere, and around that time we heard that England was in the stage of rebuilding, and we thought more or less that if we came back to England, we would stand a chance to get a job and to start a life. And I came back to England 1947. Most of the boys that came back in my crowd, they were married here and they came back to their families. They had friends in the Midlands and all that. But a few of us was left to fight our own way. And we had to, owing to the fact that we couldn't get any accommodation, we had to sleep on the underground. We used to take the last train in the night and sleep on the underground. Take the first train in the morning, right? Well, casual jobs were available, you know, by working in the factories and Lions Corner House and all that. And that's the way we survived. There were no organization or anybody that you could complain to. But when the Windrush came now, the government decided that they had to do something positive to more or less the people who came on the Windrush, which was mostly ex-servicemen, and they sent them all over the country, dispersed. They went to Birmingham, Sheffield, all over the country to the different factories. Well, I was fortunate that I got to the post office. They took 6 of us as trainee postmen. I was always ambitious and in a hurry to get somewhere. And it was on seniority. Everything was on seniority. And I was at the bottom of the pile because all the postmen before the war that joined the services and survived, they got back their jobs in the post office. So you know, it wasn't a case of racism or anything. It's just the thing that you're there. Well, I come from a singing family because Allan Wilmot is a singer. And I decided to try my luck singing in the clubs, which I was a bit successful because at that time, anything was American. Any entertainment, black entertainment, was American. And I survived for a while until a friend of mine got the idea to form a group. The group was the Southlanders.
How many of you?
4 of us. And our first hit was Why Must I Be Alone? That was our first hit on Parlophone. And then we got the record I'm a Mole and I Live in a Hole, and that took us right up to the top. This picture was taken in 1958. This is my wife. And this picture was taken in 1958, whilst I was touring. We had a hit in Germany, and we used to do a lot of shows in Germany, most of the American bases, and our hit record was played all over the continent, and we invited to do shows and tours in Sweden, Belgium, Spain, all over the continent. I always wanted a car, and this was my first royalty check that I bought this car with, which was quite a scene at the time because seeing a black guy driving a convertible, was something unusual. Things and times has changed because I can remember the days I went to Brixton. This is going back about 1947. And I'll walk around Brixton looking for another black face. And when I tell people that, they say, oh, how old are you? But this happened in 1947. And the whole world has changed with independence and everything. So it takes up, it is gradually happening. But there are certain things that don't happen suddenly. It takes a matter of time. We are on the way. We are on the way because I live to see the Royal Air Force, the second highest rank in the Royal Air Force, is a West Indian. I have mixed feeling. I'm a Jamaican first, but I'm still British otherwise.